Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone who is joining this session today. My name is Farah Naz, and I will be talking about the Earth will survive, but we may not, an inclusive approach to climate emergency in the building industry. Just to give a very high level idea of who I am Farah. I am a trained building service engineer and a chartered engineer from UK Engineering Council. I head up innovation for Burahapal Middle East. I chair CIBAC UAE chapter and currently working on projects across the Gulf region and writing a book of Arab cities, focusing on sustainability and integrated innovation. Just to give a bit of background of where I have been. So I've worked and lived in 4 continents, starting from America, then Southeast Asia, and then UK, and now in Middle East. I have an engineering degree, but with a postgraduate in sustainable environmental design from Architectural Association in London. I have been involved with Architecture for Humanity, building schools across Uganda and other African region as part of my work job outside of my current job, and also been involved and working with a group of activists on energy efficient garment factories in the Bangladesh, India, and those regions. So I have from States to UK to Asia to Middle East, I've held different positions from working as an engineer, energy modeler, site engineer, design lead manager, and now heading up sustainability. Just to give you a brief idea of the project that I've been involved with. So I was the energy modeler for the UK's first carbon neutral school, which won the 2015 RIB award, and also been involved in several school projects and building schools across Uganda and other places. In Africa and in the Middle East, I have been fortunate to work on Louvre Museum in Abu Dhabi, which got delivered a few years ago, and now 2 big projects of Sustainability Pavilion for the Expo 2020 and Museum of the Future in Dubai. So just a bit focus about what the talk is about. The talk today will open up some ideas about climate emergency and the work that I've been involved with, and some ideas on what we as a building industry should be focusing on, opening our minds to address a net zero carbon positive future for our cities. So just a very high level brief. We are in 2020 and there's 50 gigatons of CO2 emission currently in the atmosphere. And it has been stated by IPCC that if we continue as business as usual, the temperature of our world will rise by 4 degrees C in a few years' time, which will actually have a detrimental effect on our health well-being. And it has also been advised by scientists we have less than a decade to actually look at reducing the greenhouse gas emission. And the only way we can do that by keeping the temperature of the globe below 1.5 degrees C, which will actually require a 65% reduction of 2010 levels of our emissions. If you want to know a bit more, you can actually look at the IPCC document. There's an image here that explains a bit more about it. Now, how does construction relate to that? Well, 40% of the construction industry accounts for the greenhouse gas emission globally. So who work in this field have a huge responsibility. So after climate emergency was declared in 2019 September across the globe, lots of architecture companies, engineers have signed the declaration. And as Burahapal, we have made 2 commitments for our business. One is we aim to be net zero carbon for our own business operations by the end of the financial year, April 2021. And for all our projects, the target is to look at all new build projects for net zero carbon in operation by 2030 and all projects by 2050. So across the globe, globally, we have taken this pledge, and we're looking at all our projects and working with our clients and collaborating to deliver that. In the Middle East, I've been very fortunate to be part of quite a few projects, from Sustainability Pavilion to Museum of the Future to Louvre, and also in KSA, the KFD metro station and the Grand Egyptian Museum. I also work in master planning level, and there's a lot of urban intervention that's happening within the Middle East, from Red Sea development in KSA to Wadi Hanifa, which is a restoration and flood management project in Riyadh, and looking at master planning for the city of Neom and other regional cities. Now, what do I do? Well, part of my work for the last few years have focused on data-driven design and how to actually look at data and read data and feedback loops from our buildings, looking at energy efficiency and connecting it with health and well-being. Another part of my work is to look at master planning level and Another part of my work is to look at master planning level and focus on the urban walkability, well-being, and comfort. So a lot of my work is related to that. Now, as Burahapal, we have also been involved in a very interesting project as part of our C40 Cities initiative, which is the Inclusive Climate Action in Practice. And I think that's a very, very important topic. There's a report which you can download and look into it. But globally, there's a lot happening to look at the net zero carbon emissions and roadmap for our cities. And we have been involved quite heavily with other professionals to look at how to make our cities more healthier, not just from an energy and water perspective, but also from an air quality perspective. So we did a piece of work with C40 Cities looking at air quality for cities. If you go to our website, you can download that. The reason for sharing all this is that what you realize as working as an engineer and globally when you work in different continents is that engineers' intervention to projects can be huge in terms of building scale, master planning, and neighborhood. So UAE has a very strong agenda looking at the net zero roadmap. And the Prime Minister of UAE, Sheikh Mohammed, has a vision. And one of the poems talks about the future belongs to those who can imagine it, design it, execute it. It isn't something you await, but rather. Now, UAE is driving a lot of work in terms of urban planning, net zero roadmaps, also have started innovation projects in terms of city level. So for a moment, I want to focus a bit about the data that's available in UAE in terms of inclusivity and STEM. So Dubai is a city of 13 million people. There's 200 nationalities. And UAE, there's 44% women graduates who are female. And in governmental jobs, we have 40% women who are working currently in STEM jobs. That's a lot of driver has happened in UAE in the last 12 years. And if you read these two reports, one by World Economic Forum, the Global Gender Gap Report 2020, and KPMG has a very interesting report called Position to Thrive. It talks and gives data about what's happening in the last 12 years in the field of STEM and women's progression and intervention in the. Now, today I want to talk about a very specific project. It's Museum of the Future. I'm not going to talk about the brilliant architecture or the engineering, but what I am going to talk about two very specific things that deals with sustainability. And the other one is innovation and how both of these two were approached for this specific project to look at emergency. So these are images right-hand side of our BIM model. And then on the bottom left shows different analysis was undertaken on the surface of the museum to understand the reflectivity and the idea of producing energy from the facade. Now, for this project, we approached it slightly differently. Instead of looking at the three models of sustainability, social, economic, and environmental, we used the Forum for Future's 5 capital model for sustainability, which you can see in the middle. And what this model actually talks about, the natural capital, which is our natural resources, air, water, biodiversity, and renewable technology, human capital, reason for being, health and well-being, happiness, social capital, which focuses on families, communities, and businesses. And finally, it talks about financial capital, which is about investment model and financial modeling. And lastly, more about materials or fixed assets. Now, why are we talking about capital models? It's been seen and tested and found out that the last 12 years, the sustainability model we as globally are using is not really working. People are not really interested on doing checkbox exercises. Sustainability needs to be part of our regular conversation. It needs to be looked at from a capital model and investment perspective so we can have a meaningful conversation around it. So for Museum of the Future, we adopted a sustainability framework that actually adopts this model. And there were 5 key criteria that we looked at when we were thinking about sustainability, and that's very much aligned with Dubai's UAE vision. Future foresight and imagination, knowledge dissemination, capacity building, future design and acceleration, and future experience. And what I did with the stakeholders and the client and the team is came up with a sustainability framework that takes the project from vision to creating tangible objectives that then are converted into project KPIs and targets and benchmarks, then looks at the implementation and delivery. Now, the themes are quite interesting because it's not about looking at BREEAM or LEED or what's the checkbox exercise that we can do. It's more looking at what is more relevant and where can we become more resource efficient. So yes, it goes beyond BREEAM and LEED, but it looks at many other aspects which connects with human capital or social capital or manufactured capital. Now, UAE has a UAE innovation strategy, and one of the aspects that's happening in the moment is that there's a lot of funding coming for different sectors, especially 7 sectors, which is space, water, health, education, technology, transportation, and clean energy. And this is driving an innovation culture within the nation. So for the Museum of the Future, we adopted an innovation process as part of the design and construction, but also an innovation process that could be taken forward for what the museum stands for or in its operation. This is a framework from UK Green Building Council, but we did a second step of that, which is a bit more detailed and breaks down what does intelligence means, what does insight means, and ideas and implementation. So any of these processes that needs to, when they're applied in a project, it takes a lot of stakeholder engagement. So we held quite a bit of stakeholder engagement with the clients and collaborators to actually understand what are the key visions, how can visions be converted into design KPIs, and then how we can take it forward. The second topic that I want to touch on is inclusive integrated innovation. Innovation, when we discuss about it, it's often seen as a technical innovation, but there is a business innovation and there's another idea of social innovation. And once innovation is thought more from a technical side, a business side, and a social side, that concept is called inclusive integrated innovation, and it can really open up lots of opportunities in the construction sector. Quite a bit of inclusive integrated innovation taking place. There's a lot happening on organic farming, which is using the concept of technical aspect, aquaponics, and then using it from both a business and a social perspective because kids learn how to grow vegetables. And then there's a lot of research happening on different type of soil and water conservation methods. And then a lot of entrepreneurial businesses are opening up focused on that urban farming. There's also quite a bit happening. What you see on the bottom right is on 3D printing of houses and how we can actually make our construction process much smarter. So the reason why this innovation and capital models could be thought together is because they are all connected. Capital models of sustainability is actually talking about the sustainable business case. And when we integrate business, social, and technical innovation, and they could be broken down into impact investment, value creation, improved livability, well-being, greenery, and medicinal plants, we would be able to see that different innovation interventions actually has a direct or indirect, tangible or intangible co-relationship with the capital model. Now, in Museum of the Future, uh, it's a huge project and we have been working for 5 years. What we found is that there's, the pictures you see here are all the women that have been involved in the engineering of the Museum of the Future and who are still working on the project. And it was a really interestingly inclusive process where you could see how the ideas and diversity of creativity can be boomed when all these people come together. This is our design team on a typical day meeting. So what we are trying to do in this project and what we aim to do with other projects in the region use the idea of inclusive integrated innovation and the idea of capital models to actually push the business case forward. So it's not about business as usual anymore. It's about stretch, and the stretch can be, yes, we want to get high points in BREEAM and LEED, and we want to do water conservation, but we are actually pushing, or I'm working on with clients to push the projects into pioneering. For example, in Museum of the Future, in the first visioning workshop that I held with a client, we discussed about how we can make museum part of the learning experience for the city of Dubai and for the visitors and for the children. And one of the things I suggested was, why not have a solar farm which is connected to museum, which is easily accessible so people can see it, learn about how to convert solar power into electricity and how it could be used in running a building. And this idea was really highly appreciated. And now we have urban solar farm, we call it that, but actually it's building roofs converted with solar PVs, which are currently connected and generating electricity generation of the museum. So thoughts and ideas like that, which are not always everyday ideas, it are out of the box, but can be integrated with minimum cost. But just the idea of pushing the idea forward is quite important. These are some images from the Facebook page of the museum, because we just last week put the last panel in and all the lights were turned on. So that's the Prime Minister of Dubai with his son celebrating the last panel piece put on the museum. So I want to leave you with some last minute thoughts, which is how do we move forward looking at climate emergency and the projects that we're working on in built environment. And I would really humbly like to push these few ideas forward for you to consider, think, and perhaps use it in your design thinking. First is shifting the mindset of business as usual. We really need to start rethinking the business as usual and how we can innovate and how we can find opportunities to make those interventions. Secondly, business as usual versus reinventing the business case. COVID has taught us that we can look at the world differently, and we are looking at the world differently. So how can we use the learnings of COVID in our construction sector in a positive and reflective manner? Build collaborative capacity. This is very important. Collaboration is not just working with different people in a collaborative way. It's also bring in different skill sets and idea sets and actually see how we can build something stronger together. Policy and governance. Every city and country is different, but some policy and governance level intervention really helps to push agendas forward, especially agendas like climate emergency. And finally, resilience is a new Northern Star, which we will be seeing in the next 4 or 5 years. The definition of resilient design is changing as we speak. So more I would like to see when we talk about sustainability and innovation and design, it's actually creating more adaptable, resilient, changeable design. So I would like to thank you for being with me and for listening to the talk. And now I'm opening up for conversation and questions. And even if there's no time for me to respond to any of your questions, you can always email me or find me on LinkedIn, Twitter. Thank you again and have a